Good evening. There's a nice breeze out. It's almost windy, but it's a breeze, really, as we call it. This is what's behind me. The river is just right here. And let's see if I can capture what's in front. Oddly enough, they didn't have Missouri, they just had Iowa. Border state that borders Missouri to the north. So we couldn't get Missouri, so I went with Iowa. Waiting on Mingrelian Hachapuri. I asked a friend if there's a faster river than this one behind me here, or near here, and she actually had found one that is in the city center. It's the one that makes the waterfall, that I presume the botanical garden. Yeah, there's a nice breeze here tonight. It's pretty breezy. And it's almost dark. You can still see the sun is just probably going down over the mountains, it looks like. TV tower, funicular, Ferris wheel up at Tatsminda, which is, in the Georgian language, it means holy mountain. They did the temperature check on the wrist here, so they're still doing that. I see the servers wearing a mask. But of course I'm completely outdoors here. There's quite a distance between me and the few people that are here. I like this color of yellow with the blue, but it does remind me of home. That's probably the reason why I got it. Like I said, Iowa is just north of Missouri, so this is the time of year where we might put on a pullover like this or a hoodie. And it was just kind of making me laugh. But just north of here, in the North Caucasus, in the Krasnodar, Russia, when we had it wasn't Krasnodar Krai. It was, to be specific, going back to May 2005 when we went over to Kislovodsk. So it's, I think, probably further north, but Kislovodsk is actually a sister city to a city in Iowa. So if you go directly through the center, opposite side of the earth from that location, which is just north of here, it's in Russia. I'm in Georgia, the capital city of Tbilisi, for those that already don't know that. So in Kislovodsk, Russia, when we were there in May 2005, they actually had an exchange program with a city in Iowa that is the twin city, so to speak. It's the city that is the exact opposite side of the earth of Kislovodsk, Russia. And that city is in Iowa. Interesting. They had some kind of cultural exchanges. They had some, like, singers, for example, come over to Kislovodsk from Iowa and vice versa. They had this kind of exchange between the cities. And I'd actually arrived within a week of that there in Kislovodsk. So it wasn't, but within a week or two of those activities actually taking place. So at least I wasn't the only American that visits Kizilvorsk, although it was still quite rare. It was a favored place in Russia for tourists and people to come for a rest, but very much a Caucasus, mountain type city. They had a full-on modern Kodak photography, official Kodak photography processing store there. Such a visited place by tourists, but you could get like sports massage and stay in like a sanatorium or get in a hotel and stay next to it. They had like three different mineral waters that were known to be healthy that you could actually drink. They had one very it kind of reminds me of the post office back in Marshall, Missouri. I don't know how to describe that kind of building, but very nice masonry or stonework type of building. But you could try three different types of mineral water there, like sulfur type, but actual mineral waters for health. So it's known as a kind of a health resort or a health, kind of a sanatorium, a place of rest, but yet vacation, like families would come there. It was a favorite place for former Russian President Yeltsin to visit. He loved to visit Kizilvorsk. And when we arrived in May of 2005, we came over from Kiev in Ukraine, and we went past the Azov Sea on this train on the way into Russia. And we were greeted by a couple of former Russian soldiers in the forest there. Yulia and I were just exploring around Kizilvorsk, and they actually spent about a half a day with us, offered to escort us around if we needed anything, if we needed company, just not knowing how well we would be with, if we'd run into any problems or not. They offered to. They were very friendly, former Russian soldiers there in Kizilvorsk. And Yulia was half Russian. She wasn't only Ukrainian. Her father was full-blooded Russian. And he passed away when she was 12. He was a physicist, a scientist, and a physicist that developed sonic weapons for the Russian Navy at Sevastopol in the former time. And at that time, she was just my interpreter and my assistant at that particular time. The relationship began to change right around after that time, but at that point, just strictly my interpreter and personal assistant. And I had to have, even though I could speak enough Russian to get around Russia alone, I didn't speak enough Russian to feel comfortable for a stay like that. And she had interest in seeing Kizilvorsk also, because I'm not sure if she had been to Russia. If she had, it was when she was too young to really remember much. So it was probably, if I remember right, it was probably one of her first times to visit Russia as an adult. So it was, an interesting trip for her also. But we almost didn't go. The U.S. Embassy strongly warned us not to go. The Russian consulate in Kiev, the woman that we asked to apply for the visa to come into Russia, was protesting it at first, but her partner said there was nothing they could do. They exclaimed that it was a closed city. Like I said, not many Americans really went there. The real truth is I don't think Americans are welcome for a long stay in Russia unless it's Moscow or St. Petersburg, quite frankly. Now that's back in 2009 when I had a Russian-American tourist agent and a travel agency in Moscow exclusively or mainly focused on Russian tourism, travel for Americans to Russia and obtaining visas for that business or personal travel to Russia. But as I understood it, pretty much, unless it's Moscow or St. Petersburg, back then, I'm speaking about 2009, you weren't really welcome for a long stay there. I could be wrong, and it may have changed, I don't know. And it was all the more so because when I went in 2009, it was a military city. So I mean, you know, it was like that. That's from a Russian viewpoint. That's kind of understandable, right? They don't want they don't want a foreigner, an American, coming over and staying for like living in a military city where they have a lot of stuff going on. That's Russia. But I had no problems, really, overall. I mean, there was a few little things here and there that were, but overall, we didn't, on the trip in 2005, we didn't have, now, there was the issue of where the threat of kidnapping was discussed by these, like, Islamic Russian Caucasian guys that were not really the same as what we'd call the typical Russian society. We were warned about that, and Yulia was the one who ignored that warning. I'd been down at the Honey Waterfall there because I so much enjoyed seeing that. Yulia got bored with that and went back on up to the restaurant, or went to a restaurant. And so they invited her over to her table. They were very festive, North Caucasus people, but Islamic, darker skinned Islamic, that they were friendly at first, but after they started drinking, they were not friendly anymore. On the toast, they turned their back. This is after they got us up into their area, up into the mountains, and we had to go past like checkpoints and shit. It was a really kind of hairy situation. You'd see mosques on the way out there, little wisps of smoke coming up through the mosques, top of the mosques. And we were warned about it, but Yuli didn't pay attention, and she was my goddamn interpreter. And I guess I could have said no and been stronger about it, but I kind of went with her a lead on that, and I shouldn't have done that because she was told by her Russians. The Russians, like I said, she's half Russian. They told her, don't go around those people, don't trust those people. But she ignored it, and sure as shit, when we got up there and they got to drinking a little bit more, they talked about how they could just kill us and leave us up there and nobody would ever find us and shit like that. She was crying and all that shit when the girl told her this. They told that you could buy someone's daughter up there to marry for like a case of vodka and a couple of sheep. I'm like, oh, fuck no, man. Don't let me be what the hell? I mean, that's a true story. I thought it was bizarre, but they were being dead serious. They said, yeah, there's people here that if you bring them a box of vodka or a couple of sheep, you can actually just say you're going to marry their daughter, and it's a done deal. It's going to be absolutely a done deal. So with that in mind, that's exactly the type of situation we were in. But after you when you went outside the city, they had to go through several Russian checkpoints, and they actually didn't like the Russian soldiers at those checkpoints at all. There was some animosity for sure. So it's a really stupid situation. But when Yulia started crying and she's saying they're talking about killing us, I said, well, you tell them that we're ready to go and that we're going back to town. And I can either give a ride back or, well, we'll start going back. So that's how we handled it. And the guy gave us a ride about halfway in, and then a Russian soldier that worked one of the checkpoints was headed back in, and we got a ride with him about halfway back on in there. So, you got to be careful with you start drinking with people you don't know, especially up in the North Caucasus, I mean, it's just, that was, I should have been stronger about it and told her, no, we're not doing that. But they were very hospitable at first. They had a whole goddamn sheep or something out there. The whole, very, very festive. Most people are in this part of the world. But as the embassy had warned, it was not the best idea. And the Russians also warned him. But the embassy used that as an excuse later when I inquired an investigative inquiry on them in Kiev for an extortion attempt over there that the police in Kiev had planned for about 4 months. This again was in 2005, about June of 2005, May or June. So when I made that investigative inquiry, they didn't talk about, the real things that happened. They blamed it on our trip to Russia. They did. They blamed, and that's not really what that was about. Because the lawyer told me they had been watching me 4 months, which means they had planned it before we went to Kislovodsk. So whether they liked Russia or not, whether they were for the Orange Revolution or not, because see, that was just 4 or 5 months after the Orange Revolution, and so there was a part of that group over there that was very skeptical about Americans anyway, or anybody from Western Europe, because of the soft color non-violent revolution that had just taken place at that time. It was nothing like the very, very violent, very deadly, very tragic in the sense that there was a lot of violence and deaths in the Maidan, the revolution that took place there in Kiev in 2014, I believe it was, 14 or 15. Which is when, around the same period that Crimea was then Russian occupy that and violated the what is known as the Budapest Memorandum or the Budapest Agreement. It's one of those terms where Ukraine made an agreement and signed to give up their nuclear weapons in exchange for, I don't know if Russia was a part of that signatory, but also some Western diplomats, including the United States. The agreement is that, okay, Ukraine, you give up your nuclear weapons, we will assure your territorial integrity, we will help you with your defense. They did that, and they feel like a lot of them feel like they got cheated because Russia stepped in and took Crimea, but Russia had a security agreement to use the Navy there based at Crimea, and they were going to get kicked out basically. So the Russia just came in and took all of Crimea. That's how I understand it. There's probably more details and information, and I'm not a history expert, but that's my understanding of it. So if you look up Budapest Memorandum or Budapest Agreement, I think that's what you'll find about that situation. It's kind of one side says that Russia attacked first, the other side says no, that Ukraine attacked Russia first. So, I was not in favor of the U.S. troops going further and being placed more and further deeper in Ukraine. They're not a NATO member, and there are sides that say one or the other started the war. It's not our business what's going on in Ukraine at this point. It's really not at all, and we should not get involved in that. All that'll end up is Ukraine will be completely taken over, and possibly a World War III type scenario where the West would be, involved in, America specifically would be involved in probably what would end up being direct warfare with Russia, maybe even China. It depends on how everything is at the moment, I guess, with the geopolitical situation. But I was in Ukraine for 13 months, and they've got a long way to go, unless things have dramatically changed in 10 years, and I'm sure some things have. I watched Olga, who has some videos up over there. She's promoting investing in tourism and things in Ukraine, and so according to her, some things have changed, but they've got a long way to go before that it's just not our business. But see, the problem is we had a former administration that was trying to make it our business. That's the problem. So the Mongolian Hachapuri has just arrived, and I'm sure David might find this interesting. Unfortunately, Dave, I didn't order any meat. The Georgians are known for their specialty and deliciousness, and they're best in the region as far as meat dishes go. So this is Mongolian Hachapuri. So typically the cheese is more on top, whereas with other types of Hachapuri, the cheese would be inside. So typically with your typical hachapuri, when you will come to Georgia or Tbilisi, the capital city, there's several different styles of hachapuri, but the Mongolian style actually has the cheese on top. The typical hachapuri, the most common, the cheese will be inside. The bread will be on the outside. So that's what makes this quite different. So I'm gonna stop the video and eat this delicious Mongolian hachapuri. And you might, whether you're watching this live stream now or whether you're gonna see this later, if I decide to post it on other video platforms or social media such as Twitter or YouTube, etc. Now you learned a little bit of history about this part of the world and some of the news that you might have seen the last few years about places like Georgia or Ukraine or Russia. Thanks for watching, and it's a beautiful evening. Oh, there we go. It took a while for it to live stream, so just a quick look at halfway through. Vorontsovze Square. Behind me is the television tower, which is known quite well for Tbilisi as a kind of symbolic mark. Tatsminda, or Holy Mountain in English, but in Georgian it's actually spelled with an M-T-S, Tatsminda, as far as the start of it. Also the funicular restaurant, and then the Ferris wheel over there. And actually I had rode the roller coaster there with who was then just a girlfriend. It was Kate Latsunishvili. I see that Christopher Essex has just joined me as the device is about blowing out of my hand. There's stuff, people's menus that they bring out, they just blew away their paper menus, which makes sense, you know, for now, because of the situation. But there's some people having some wonderful Georgian wine. This is Tiflisi, old Tiflisi, at Vorontsovze Square. I don't know if I guess I'll get part of the square in here. It's a small square, but it's quite known here in the city. So I'll switch this around. So this is actually the square right here. And that's it. It's not very big, is it? It's really not very big. So, but on the previous video, I gave a little bit of the history of the Ukraine and also Russian conflict, as well as some experiences about being on the opposite side of the earth. And I was talking about the Iowa State University, or the Iowa-based university, with the irony that I'm a Missouri guy. I'm from Missouri. In fact, Chris Essick and I attended Missouri Valley College at the same time for a while, or I actually had already attended there, or something like that. I'd have to go back and find the exact dates. But Chris and I attended Missouri Valley College there in Missouri. So it's ironic that I'm wearing an Iowa State or Iowa University hoodie, but that's all I could find. That's all there was, right? I'm like, well, hell, it's close enough. It's not Missouri, but it's close enough. Besides, it's easier to spell if somebody asking. So it was at the Terra Nova store, which is an Italian fashion brand down on the near the metro here. They've also got Terra Nova in a larger, well, maybe the same size, maybe a bit larger out at East Point, the shopping mall. Which, yes, believe it or not, they still have a shopping mall here. Ours are disappearing in America, I think, for more reasons than one. But it just made me laugh because I'm like, hell, Iowa's north, and I'm from Missouri, but fuck it, I'll buy that Iowa shirt. So that's what I did from Terra Nova just yesterday. And they temperature check you there also. I think. I don't remember actually, but they did here. They temperature checked on the wrist. A lot of places here will temperature check you on the forehead. As you can see, I'm out on the patio or the patio deck here, so I feel a little bit more comfortable with that as far as being a Saturday evening out during this time. But this is Tbilisi. This is Tbilisi, Georgia, for those that don't already know that. And I'm at Vorontsovze Square at the old Tiflisi pub, or at Vorontsovze Square. Delicious Mangrelia hachapuri with cheese on top, as well as cheese inside, and the just a typical tomato, onion, little greens there on the salad. The mineral water, which is this is my favorite mineral water in the country of Georgia, which is Vorontsovze. Vorontsovze is actually pictured there on the front. It is a place that I've also visited and filmed with Kate, former fiance, and it seems like I was going to say something about that, but I'm not recalling it at the moment. But the film in Vorontsovze is where Kate and I were at in 2016. And you can actually drink the mineral water right there in Vorontsovze National Park, fresh from the ground. You can get a cup. This is a glass. Of course, you can get a cup right there and drink it fresh right out of. It's actually a little bit different tasting because it's warm there. This is cold, and this particular bottle I've chose to get the version with gas, which is typical for me. There's an ambulance on the square right now. They run with their blue lights. They're pretty quiet here during this period of time. They'll run, but they run silent 99% of the time. You can see it. Yeah. So, Chris, if you're watching, hello, and I enjoy the photos of you and your friends and family back there and what you're up to sometimes. And the real estate promo with you doing the actual juggling and hurdling and joggling, if I remember is the right term. But it's nice weather out here. I started filming again because there's a large group of people who came in, and I wanted to kind of capture that. I don't know if I got it, though. They left. There are a lot of tourists that come in and go for here, especially here. In fact, the last several times I've been here, there have been tour buses that stop here. So this restaurant is it's a favorite amongst travelers, especially, but as well as locals. They have a wide variety of wines. They have a whole wall full of the wines here, bottles, and some of the best, most delicious Georgian traditional cuisine right here. Anyway, have a nice night. I may come on later, but I just wanted to capture a kind of a side slice view of that Mangrelia hachapuri too, because especially here. There's another restaurant, I think it's Machakala, or was it another one? Shajnagori, it's really good. So there's a lot of it, but personally I like Ajaruli hachapuri too. It's got the egg with the egg yolk unbroken in the middle. It looks like a bread boat with cheese in the middle too. Those two are my favorite. Anyway, have a nice evening. Thanks for watching, Chris. Good to see you. When I do see you on Facebook, and be sure and see if we can get together when I get back.